Hey, so happy snow day. Um, we are going to be talking about rate of change. So you don't have this handout yet, but you can just do this on a separate sheet of paper. So let me get this downloaded so that I can write on it. So we're talking about average rate of change. So we will take notes on this. Then I'm going to release your test study guide. We're going to be looking at taking a test next week. So I want you to go ahead and be able to start looking over what's going to be on that. So average rate of change. It says a construction worker drops a bolt while working on a high-rise building. The distance the bolt has fallen after t seconds is given by this function. So t is your input, s of t is your output. Determine the average rate of change of the bolt from 1 to 4 seconds. So we're using s of t equals 320 minus 5t squared, and we're looking from going 1 to 4 seconds. So s of t is the same thing as your f of x, or your y, your output. The 1 to 4, those are seconds. That's time, which is your x. Okay? So now, to find the average rate of change, we want to say the change in y over the change in x. So the change in x is going to be 4 minus 1, x minus x. And the numerator is going to be the whatever y is minus whatever your other y is. So to determine that, we need to find s of 1. And that's going to be one of your y values. And then we also need to find s of 4, which will be a y value. 2. We substitute 1. And when we do that, that becomes 320 minus 5, so that's 315. Then for the s of 4, you're going to substitute 4 in to the parentheses. And so that's going to give us the 4 times 2, which is 16. 5 times 16 is 80. So 320 subtract 80 is 240. So I'm going to write this here. This is going to be s of 4 minus s of 1. We found s of 4, which was 240. Minus the 315 divided by 4 minus 1. So that's going to give us negative 75 divided by 3. So the average rate of change is negative 25. Okay? So, to find the average rate of change, what you want to remember is you want to take f of y2, not f of y2, f of x2. F of x2 minus f of x1 divided by y2 minus y1. No, my goodness. Sorry. x2 minus x1. Anyway, so this is the same as like your slope formula. If you remember slope, it's rise over run, the change in y over change in x. So this is your formula for the average rate of change. Now, let's see. there's a worksheet that goes along with this. So we're going to look at doing these problems together. Again, you don't have this handout. Normally I would have given it to you in class. Alright, so average rate of change. Remember, we are going to be doing the change in y over change in x. So let's look at number 1. The volume of a cube is changing with time by this equation, where V of t is the volume and t is the time. What is the average rate of change in the volume with respect to time when we go from 1 to 4 seconds? So we're asking, what is V of 4 minus V of 1 divided by 4 minus 1? So we might want to find, well, what is V of 1? Okay, so looking at 8 times 1 cubed, that's going to give us 8. Now we also need to find V of 4. So we substitute 4 into the equation. And 4 cubed would be 64 times 8 is 512. So we would say 512 minus 8, I'm substituting in. So that becomes 504 divided by 3. So the average rate of change is 168. So number 2 says a projectile is shot in the air from the ground level. The equation for the height is S of t of that projectile after time. So S of t is going to be what we use for our change in y, where t is seconds. What is the average rate of change? We're going from 1 to 3 seconds. So we're going to say, oh, this is S. So we're going to say S of 3 minus S of 1 divided by 3 minus 1. So now I need to find, well, what is S of 3 and what is S of 1? Okay, so now we want to do that. We would say negative 16 times 9 is a negative 144. Negative 144 plus 668. So that is going to give us 624. So S of 3 is 624 minus, so now we need to find S of 1. So S of 1 is going to be negative 16 times 1 cubed squared plus 256 times 1. Okay, so that would give us negative 16 plus 256, which is 240. Alright, when we do our subtraction, that gives us 384 divided by 2. So our rate of change is 192. Alright, so now we want to look at 3 and 4. So remember, anytime you see it asks for what is the average rate of change, Average rate of change means change in Y over change in X. Number 3 says you own an apartment building and are renting the apartments. The equation gives the revenue in terms of the number of apartments rented. R of X is the revenue and X is the number of rented apartments. What's the average rate of change on an interval from 60 to 80 rented? So we want to find R of 80 minus R of 60 divided by 80, subtract 60. So now to do that, I need to find, well, what is R of 80? So I'm going to come down here a little bit. So for number 3, R of 80. And then I want to find R of 60. Excuse me. So that's negative 8 times 80 squared plus 1400 times 80. And then we will do negative 8 times 60 squared plus 1400 times 60. Alright, so I'll give you a minute to try that. That first part, you should get negative 51,200. And then here, we would have 112,000. And so I get 60,800. So that's the revenue when we have 80 apartments rented. So now when you have 60 apartments rented, we're going to have negative 28,000. No, 28,800 plus 1,400 times 60, which is 84,000. And we do that and get 55,200. Alright, so now we're going to substitute those numbers into the numerator. So the R of 80 minus R of 60 divided by, I went ahead and subtracted that. Alright, so when I subtract the numerator, I got 5,600 divided by 20, and I get 280. So the average rate of change is $280 on the interval of 60 to 80. So now it says, using problem 3, the profit in terms of an apartment is given by this new equation, where P of X is the profit in dollars. So this is the profit, and so what is the average rate of change of dollars received to apartments rented from 60 to 80? So now we're looking at profit. So I know that's going to be P of 80 minus P of 60 over 80 minus 60. So now for number 4, I need to find, well, what is the P of 80? So I'm using my new equation that is in number 4. And then we'll do P of 60. So I'll let you try that. My battery's dying. Let me, there, I got it. Okay, so this will be negative 51,200. And then the 1,300 times 80 is actually 104,000. So that tells me my profit is 52,800. And now, when we have rented 60 apartments, you would have negative 28,800 plus 78,000. So that tells me the profit is 49,200. So now we put that into our average rate of change. 52,800 minus 49,200 divided by the 20. And that gives us 3,600 divided by 20. So there's 180. That's the rate of change, average rate of change of the dollars received to apartments rented from 60 to 80. So the big thing here is to know that you're doing the change of Y over change in X. That's the average rate of change. And then to get the change in Y, you have to actually find two parts of the function given your X's. So that's using some substitution. And like I said, I am going to upload the study guide for the test so you can start looking over that. If you have any questions about average rate of change, just shoot me an email. You have a good rest of your day.